For this next video, I'm going to show you how to set up a controller so you can control the vehicle. So I'm going to be using, I think it's an Xbox One controller. You can actually set it up in Blender so you can just drive it around. It's kind of like a simulation. Even, at least on my computer, keeps the frame rate around 25 frames per second, which is what the animation is. So it doesn't even drop any frames, really. I'm doing this in Windows, and from what I understand, the library we're using is only for Windows. But if you're on a Mac or Linux, maybe you can get an idea of the direction you need to go to do this. So what we're going to do is, I'm in my Blender 3.0 directory, and I'm going to run this as administrator. The reason for this is because we have to install a library for Python in Blender. So if you're familiar with Python, you know that you usually use pip to install libraries, or at least most people do. I'm going to open up our file here. But you can't just, there's no real way to do that in Blender. Well, there's a way, and I'm going to show you. And it's going to be, using this code that I found from the website. So it's this website. I'm just going to put it here at the top and comment it out. And I'll show you the website. All right, here's the website. B3D Interplanetary. And it has this code down here. And we're going to copy that code. Now it's set up to install SciPy, but we don't need that. We need, what's called? It's called X input hyphen capital Python. Okay. And let's toggle our system window. So it's going to show up like this, and then hit play or run it. So mine already has it installed, so I didn't need to do anything. Hopefully yours says finished also. If there's a bunch of red, I got a bunch of red errors because I didn't run it as administrator. So hopefully you got that to work. I'm going to make a new file here, and we're going to use this code from this website. So let me put this at the top. Oops. This is a Blender developer website. And this code is kind of a sample modal code. Operator modal timer. I'm not the right person to ask about all this, but my understanding is it kind of allows two different threads to go at the same time. So on the one hand, we're going to have a thread running Blender while the animation's playing, and it's going to allow another thread to, kind of probe the controller and get its inputs. So what the sample does, if you were to play it right now, is it would change the background color. It kind of changes the hue. You can see it's incrementing the saturation, then I think the hue by this amount, kind of every frame. But we don't want to do that, so let's delete this text. And let's make a couple other modifications here. So the first thing we want to do is we need to import our library we just installed. So import X capital I inputs. No, just input. Okay. And then we need to get it. So we're going to have our code right here. It's going to be aligned with this if statement up here. And the first thing we need to do is get the state of the controller. So this is just going to probe the controller and find out what buttons are pressed, and what position the joysticks are in or triggers are in. So X input dot get state, and my controller is the first controller, so 0. And then we want to target this controller that we created. And to do that, we can come to these custom properties, right click, and say copy full path. So this is going to target the controller and the Excel property. And we're going to say equals, and it's going to be X input dot get trigger underscore values. So the triggers are the top triggers, I guess. There's one on the left and right. And we're going to use the state, which we define right there. And for the acceleration, it's the right trigger, which is the second trigger in the list. And then we're going to multiply it by 100 since we're using a percentage. So the values you get out of these are 0 to 1, or in the case of the thumb joysticks, -1 to 1. All right, we're going to copy this and do the same thing for the brake. So change this to brake. And instead of 1, it's going to be 0. So that's the left trigger. And then we can do kind of the same thing for steering, but we're going to not use a trigger, but we're going to use the thumb joystick. So steering. Instead of get trigger, I'm going to do get thumb values. And this is the first thumb, and it's the first axis. So the left-right axis. If you went top to bottom, you'd put 1 right there. Okay. All right, we need to add some things over here to the execute function. So what we're going to do, you know that every time we hit play, we cycle the constraint on and off for this controller we have. And we're going to automate that. So first we need to make it active. So we're going to do bpy.context.view layer.objects.active equals bpy.data.objects, and then the controller. Okay. And then we want to cycle it or give it a constraint. OPS dot rigid body constraint underscore add. Then we'll remove it. Again, this is just a way to make sure the simulation is reset. Constraint underscore remove. And then we're going to play the animation. .ops.screen .animation underscore play. Okay, we'll just put a space between that. All right, and that should be it for that. And at this point, I really thought this would work, but there's something kind of funny going on where when you define these values right here, they don't actually, it doesn't like trigger an update for Blender. So we're going to kind of trick it into updating Blender. So what we're going to do is we're going to say BPY, or actually we can just copy this up until the controller. Okay, so we're targeting our controller, and then we're going to say the location. We'll just say 0 for the X value. Doesn't really matter. We're going to say equals 0.00. So what this is going to do is going to move it to 0 along the x-axis. Of course, it's already at 0, so it's not actually going to do anything. But it does just trigger kind of an update, I guess. So I'm going to put a comment here. For some reason, need this. Okay. So hopefully this will work. I'm going to make this, I'm going to press N, get rid of that menu. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Press 0 on the numpad so I get the view here. And hopefully this will work. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and then hit play. And I have a typo somewhere, so I'm going to escape out of there. Let's look at our console and see which line. I have BBPY, which is obviously not right. That's on line 21. So yep, I did that wrong. So let's hit save and now play. Okay. Still moving on its own, which probably means I didn't ever delete the bake. Yep, I did not delete the bake, so make sure you delete the bake. Okay, let's try it again. Control S to save it. And it's not moving, so that's a good thing. I'm gonna hit the trigger, the right trigger, and it's going. And it's steering, so that works. Let's see if the brake works. Yep, the brake works. So now, with our controller, I'm using, again, an Xbox One controller. I can just drive this around. You can run into all these cylinders and whatever else, make a racetrack. And it's kind of like a driving simulator. And just for a little bit of fun, let me hit the brake. So to get out of this, just put your mouse in the 3D viewport and hit escape twice, and it'll reset it. We can make this a little bit more fun by giving the motor some more power. So it'll drift around. So I'm going to select this motor, and I'm going to come down here and edit the driver. Oh, for some reason that's not working. Edit the driver. And then over here, I'm going to make this 5. So give it 10 times more torque, I guess. And I'll just take this driver and copy it over here. So now both motors will have 10 times more torque. And we can also change the steering so that it steers farther. So I'm going to make this 45 or 40. We'll make it 40. So now instead of steering 30 degrees at walk, it's 40. Okay. All right, let's see what happens now. Hit Control S to save it. Now I can drift around. Ooh. And it's pretty squirrely. Hit the barrels. Go over the ramp and flip it over. All right, and of course, if you want to save this animation, you can come over here and current cache to bake. And we can go out to layout. Oh, first we need to escape out of here, don't we? Okay, now we want to go, we can watch it. Into the barrels. And come over here and flip it over. Okay. All right, so that just about wraps it up. Of course, you can always change the friction values of each individual wheel, or you can come here and you can go above 1, so you can make the friction 5 if you wanted to. And that pretty much wraps it up.